We've got a great session coming up as well. So Ben from Unplugged has been a great partner, a member of the community. He's all about the community. So he has been a great supporter of Tesla Takeover the last 3 years and of our club. And he has brought some really cool toys for you guys to see this year. So if you guys haven't been to the Unplugged booth, you definitely should. So 2 exclusive introductions here at Tesla Takeover. So definitely go check that out. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Ben Schaefer, and John Stringer's going to interview Ben. So give it up for Ben.
Let's give it up for Ben.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So Ben, first off, this is your 3rd year. Feel free to take a seat, get comfortable. So first off, thank you for literally bringing 4 cars. You can go see a cool cop car, just flashing lights over at the Unplugged booth. But they have been pioneers and partners to help make this event to what it is, bringing something unique and awesome every year. But most importantly, for the Tesla community, there's always, to make this transition to a sustainable future, it can't just be about making great cars. It takes a village. And what Unplugged, based on Ben's background, which we'll get a little bit into, they've been the pioneers for performance upgrades, enhancements, and obviously so much more. But it's really because of Unplugged performance that it's taking really, I would say, car racing, tracking to the brink in order to, again, make EVs a thing in the space, because it's just been dominated for decades and decades by gas cars. So Ben, first off, thank you for being here today. Thank you for being just a huge advocate within the community and for what you're doing, especially in this space.
Thank you. It's all about the community, and you've been, a rock for our community putting on this event. And just in general, part of the great value of being a Tesla car owner is events like this and community coming together. And I'm just honored to be on stage amongst other greats that have added value to the community in their own ways. For us, we've had a really interesting long journey. We're 10 years into this Tesla journey, and every year the most important thing is just how do we help? How do we add value? How do we make compelling content that you in the audience want to listen to? How do we make compelling content that convinces someone to own a Tesla, whether it's a car enthusiast who thought driving an EV might not be as fun as driving their Porsche, get them on board, or more recently, how to get police fleets on board that have police cars that are spending more taxpayer money than necessary and putting all this gasoline burnt up in the atmosphere when it's idling. There's a ton of use cases for EVs and for Tesla, and above all, we exist to tell a compelling story of use cases of why you should own a Tesla. And in a lot of cases, it takes a push, an engineering push, which we do, a community push, which we all share together. It's a fight that we all share because we believe in it.
So obviously you started 10 years ago, but that wasn't, it's not like you just were started in the auto industry. You have a huge background. You were even in Fast and Furious video. You had a screenshot there. But tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get into auto? And then the second part of that question was why did you go all in on Tesla 10 years ago, which is 2013? I mean, this is the year after they announced the supercharging network, but very, you're the pioneer in this space, the AMG for Tesla, right? If not better. So just tell us a little bit about your background, and then why did you guys decide to just go all in on this company that at that point, was one of the most shorted stocks and most hated companies and underrated companies?
Yeah, we follow our heart more than taking the traditional calculated business approach to things. I started the business that we began with 23 years ago out of my dorm room in college, and it started as a hobby because I liked cars and driving fast. And I happen to like Japanese culture as a whole. So I started 23 years ago modifying and racing Japanese sports cars, which then evolved into a variety of interesting life experiences at the time. I was involved with the first Fast and the Furious movie and did some consulting with them on future ones. I was involved in the early days of time attack and drifting motorsports culture, and basically was around during the rise of what we consider Japanese car tuning. And that was fun. As a person who liked fast cars, that was fun for me at the time. But fast forward 2013, we were still doing that. We had some degree of success doing that, and we happened to buy an office building next to Tesla's design studio in Hawthorne, and met them, basically. Our cars were not EVs, they were noisy, and our neighbors took notice of our noisy, very powerful cars and knocked on our door and said, "What the hell's going on over here? What are all these crazy cars?" And those guys are still at Tesla now, and we built a friendly relationship. And prior to that, to answer your question about the all-in on Tesla, I bought Tesla shares in 2012 for like $23, $24 a share because I liked what Elon was doing and I liked the company. I didn't know if it was going to work or not, but I thought it was a good idea. Let me dabble in that. I didn't think about it as my career. When I met our neighbors at Tesla, I already was interested in their business, but at that time, like most of my customers back then, I was skeptical of whether a Tesla was a car lover's car or whether it was a techie car or an eco car. I didn't know if it was a driver's car. And all it took was basically that meeting. I bought a Model S P85 Plus. I drove it one time, and I realized everything that I knew about cars was flipped on its head. Everything we would do to modify cars was a waste of time and irrelevant because you can't shift faster than never. You can't have more torque than instantaneous at all times. Like, the recipe for electric cars from a driving enthusiast standpoint was clear as day. There was obviously scaling issues for Tesla to get to where they are now, but for me, I felt like any day spent modifying gasoline-powered cars was a day wasted. And more importantly, like, I had to answer for myself, did I just waste the last 13 years of my life doing something that is basically horseback riding? Like, I felt like the industry was instantly dead and a new industry was coming. And what did that mean to me with my life? What did that mean to me with my friends who loved cars? Was there still an enthusiast culture like we have today where people go modify their cars and show up at events? Was there still track day culture and motorsports culture? And there wasn't obvious answers. No one said yes because there wasn't anybody doing it. You couldn't modify a Tesla because no one made parts to modify a Tesla. So I had to transition our business from being a distributor and a custom car builder to being a parts manufacturer to create the parts that created the culture, that created these things. And we did that with no customer. So when you talk about like all in, we were all in the most stupid way possible because we took every dollar my other business made, pumped it into making parts for a product that there was no one modifying Teslas. And then on top of that, I stopped paying myself, so I had to gradually liquidate my Tesla shares that I had a low-cost basis and to even survive through it. And we were like all into the death because we just knew it was going to get there. It was just a question of how long would it take, how many steps along the way. So, we created the things that, are part of our brand story, Tesla Corsa track day events, to encourage people to understand what their car could even do at the limits, to get driver coaching, to have fun, not get thrown in jail. Oddly enough, now we make police cars where you can get thrown in jail for doing that same stuff on the street. So there's an unusual relationship here between things. I think we're actually the only car tuning company that makes cars that go fast on the street and makes police cars that pull those people over. So that's a really unusual contrast. But the bottom line is we run the business based on how can we add value to this mission that Tesla has? How can we do things that are a little bit adjacent to them that we know they would like, but that they're not going to do because they're busy tackling much bigger topics than the topics that we tackle. Yeah. And here we are.
Yeah, I just love what you said, how you literally were like betting on nothing really because this was a new space. But how did you even go about designing products? Like, what is obviously made you different today, but really even then, like, you're designing products for an industry that hadn't even really been started. Like, I mean, again, Tesla back then in 2012, 2013, was barely putting out many Model S's, tens of thousands maybe at that point. But how did you even go about taking like your background and then being like adding a different lens through that, especially in the EV space?
It's a good question. I think intuition, we're our own best and worst customer. We're more critical than other customers, so we design things that we think need to exist. We don't operate based on focus groups. Right now we're engineering for Cybertruck, and that's a new customer base. We're engineering for police, and that's a new customer base. We don't just copy paste ideas that worked somewhere before and assume it works. We think about what's the use case, what's the objections, what are the reasons people make choices, and how do we give them something so damn compelling that they have to take notice. Even for this event, we were talking, I was like, if we're going to show up, I want to bring something special. So I think about what would be special at an event where there's so much amazing stuff all around. And we made our best attempt at it. We brought, what we think is one of our best ever street creations, which is basically a street version of our Dark Helmet race car. We brought our first police car, which is another debut. These are 2 world debuts here. And our whole philosophy is, how do we add value and be relevant? If you're trying to add value and you're not relevant, you're wasting your time. So relevancy is really important, and you have to feel it, you have to know it. And in our case, we bet our livelihoods on it. If we're wrong, we die. If we're right, we survive. We've survived 10 years. We haven't died yet. So we understand enough to survive, which is a good thing. But the bottom line is we've also seen enough being enthusiasts that we kind of borrow inspiration. When I mentioned I was early days of Japanese car tuning, I saw what a community being built looked like on the inside with Japanese car culture, both with media, with Fast and the Furious, with car shows and events and race events. So there is a little bit of a recipe. We can make a car that goes really fast, but if it doesn't look interesting, I might not have a conversation with you about why it goes fast. It might be too technical. If you make a car that looks great but doesn't have anything behind it, I might lose you at some point because it looks great, but it has no soul or purpose. It's just a trend that is here today, gone tomorrow. So there has to be a full scale of understanding how to excite somebody with cars. And that is what we learned from Japanese car tuning and what we tried to recreate with track day culture, with the events we've held at our office. We've held Owners Club events at our office. We had drive-in movies at our office and pre-events for Tesla launches. Every one of these things matters, and it's, you can't do it without really all of it. It's one big pie you have to bake. You got a lot of ingredients.
Yeah, and so much of what you do is really similar to the way Tesla is, right? Just making compelling products where it's just the product just sells itself, and there's really just nothing else that you're going to want to use or have. Let's talk a little bit about.
I got video if you want to.
I was going to transition into that.
Yeah.
Before we hit the video, tell us, for those that don't know, a little bit about Pikes Peak, the history there, and then what brought you there, and maybe even a little bit on how you selected Randy as your driver.
So Pikes Peak, all you need to know is it's a terrible idea. Don't ever race there. That's a pretty good summary of it.
So you're racing there.
It's a really bad idea. But one of the stupid things that unites car people is we take risks, sometimes calculated, sometimes just really dumb. I had a background doing things that probably will get me pulled over by the officers that we make police cars for now. And when you're involved in driving fast on the street, which I don't recommend or condone, by the way, there are moments where you can do that legally and make dumb choices legally. Pikes Peak is a road that has no guardrails, goes up 14,000 feet. The speed limit's like usually 20 miles an hour. And we send a driver up there with a car that's doing 130, 140 miles an hour. They can die. If a part fails, they can die. A lot of things happen, they can die. And you wonder, why does that exist? I don't know. I don't know why it exists. And you wonder, okay, if it exists, dumb people like us are going to go do it, so we go do it. And the reason we go do it is, number one, because we do the same dumb things in much less safe places, and now we're older and grown up and we don't do those dumb things anymore. But when I was younger, I used to run the canyons, in the middle of the night at midnight and put myself at risk and do those things. This is at least the legal way to do that. And for people who love motorsports, there's always a risk involved, and this is a 101-year-old event. And in terms of why it fits into our business model, because it's also a terrible business idea to do, We destroyed our car the first year and had to buy another one. The budgets don't make any sense when you just sign up for just like pure punishment. But we do it because of the challenge. We do it because of the camaraderie and stories that it builds. It's a bit like going to war in some respects with people. Your teammates, our technicians, are better for it. Our team is better bonded for it. You live through really extreme circumstances like, I'm sure people do with mental fitness stuff, Ironman type stuff. It's like that in some ways for cars. We're up at 2 in the morning every day, going up on the mountain in freezing cold and pitch black, and wondering if we're ever going to see our car and driver alive again when it goes around a corner because you can't see anything. So these are life experiences that are not for everyone, but for us, we're also storytellers. We want to showcase that driving a Tesla is the most fun thing you can do. And we take pride every time we take, in this case, our car dark helmet is factory power, factory battery pack, factory firmware. It's the DNA of every Tesla Model S Plaid that Tesla sells. We take that family sedan and we go up there and we race against multi-million-dollar purpose-built race cars and we beat them. And that's pretty cool. That's one of the reasons we do it. It doesn't always make sense as to why we choose that, but we like those challenges and we seek them out.
Let's play the video. Yeah, no, you get chills just watching that, especially seeing that there's literally no guardrails going up that hill. But I think when you think of like what's next, obviously, you're clearly. I think it's been 3 years at Pikes Peak, right? 4 years at Pikes Peak. Obviously, performance upgrades, enhancements. Cybertruck's coming. So performance is one thing, and now trucking like the Ford Raptors and the Rams. What is that like when you think of how you guys are gonna work on that? And I assume you guys are obviously working a little bit on that, maybe just a little bit. But what does that look like? How has that been like a step change in your guys' mental thinking, especially when it's been so focused on racing and making these cars more performance focused versus like outdoor adventure focused?
Yeah, it's a good question for sure. And it's really exciting to take on new challenges. One of the things about, I think, how maybe many entrepreneurs are wired, I'm certainly this way, is it gets really boring to do the same thing year after year. And it's not that we're ever going to get bored of racing or building fast cars. That's in our blood. But new challenges are really exciting. And at the end of the day, I think, entrepreneurs and creating businesses at their best are great at identifying challenges and solving challenges in unique ways. And Tesla has been really fun to be, associated with for 10 years because as markets evolve and things evolve, the goalpost moves and there are always new challenges to tackle. And Cybertruck is the first time for us, but also, for a lot of people at Tesla to tackle this challenge because it's very different from their other vehicles they make in a very different market. So I think everyone's kind of going at it with fresh eyes. I'm paraphrasing a little bit for Tesla, but I know for us. And I think the fresh eye perspective is quite good because, a lot of times creativity comes from, and it's going to sound a little controversial, but ignorance actually helps creativity in some regards because you're not going into it with the preconception of how it's supposed to be. You go into it with a blank slate and then you decide how it's supposed to be based on science and facts and just what the right answers are. So for Cybertruck, and for police, and for really everything we do, there's a commonality, which is good engineering should be cross-applicable to any use case. And we look at Cybertruck from the ground up as far as what do we do with this new vehicle? My philosophy for the aftermarket and companies like ours, I think at their best, what they do, or what we do, I should say, is deeply understand the DNA of the vehicle and make it more of what it's supposed to be. Not go against what it's supposed to be, but make it more of that. And when we race a Plaid, Plaid, the DNA is it's Plaid. We understand the Spaceballs reference. It's supposed to be the fastest damn thing there is, so how do we make it faster? You can always make something more, especially in the aftermarket, because we cheat. Tesla has a rule book we don't play by. Tesla has a rule book dictated by different economics and scale, dictated by different global homologation standards and crash safety standards and all this nonsense that I hate. We just are in the aftermarket. We do what we want. So we get to cheat. So in our cheating way of doing things, how do we do more of what the Cybertruck is and what is the Cybertruck? That's where we start. What is a Cybertruck? It can mean different things to different people. That's part of the greatness of it, is Cybertruck is a Swiss Army knife. It can mean a lot of different things. To us, what it means is the most badass vehicle anyone's ever made. That's what it means to us. So why is it badass? It can do anything, is damn near indestructible. If you had to be in one vehicle when the world's falling apart, you're on Mars, you're in a war, you're in a future with cyborgs around you, where do you want to be? You want to be in a Cybertruck. At least I do. So that's what the Cybertruck DNA is, and our goal is to make it more of that. So I apologize if everyone thought we're going to be making giant wings and racing parts for Cybertruck. We definitely will support Cybertruck racing and would love to see that, but our focus is on how do you make the Cybertruck even more badass, even more indestructible, even more useful for any scenario, even more, if it's just you and your truck against the world, how do you win? Like, this is how we think of it and how we engineer for it.
Are you able to share about any of it? So it is the most badass car coming out, but what aspects of that, if you're not allowed to talk about certain things, but what aspects of it being badass, whether it's like the car you want to be on if the world's coming to an end or a war's happening, is there like more bulletproof windows, or what? Is there anything that you could give us a preview into?
I think there's a lot of synergy of what we're doing with police fleet stuff and Cybertruck, both with the fact that the Cybertruck will be a great police car, but also that we're making advancements into ballistic protection. We're making advancements into ruggedization and use cases across the board, whether it's storage, whether it's off-road related stuff and suspension components. There's a crossover between this. It's a crossover between this and executive vehicle transport. We still, as Tesla enthusiasts, cringe a little bit about the idea that if Kamala Harris or someone comes to town, we want them driving around in a Tesla, not in something else. There are cases where there needs to be more ballistic protection, even on high-end Teslas like Model X's and Model S's. We want to see Tesla be more ruggedized in every scenario, because the more use cases Tesla has, the stronger Tesla is. And the aftermarket, our job is to support that. And for Unplugged, our job is 100% to support that. So I think there's a lot of crossover in terms of our supply chain knowledge, engineering knowledge, the use cases we're solving for. An example I used to love is for race cars, you use CFD, which is a computational fluid dynamics that manages how to basically make a vehicle efficient in whatever strategy you want for aerodynamics. For racing, what you want to do is maximize for grip, for downforce. I think we were maybe the first in the aftermarket to maximize for range when we made these efficiency products for the Model 3 and Model Y, using the same ideas that normally would yield the giant spoilers you see on our race car. The point is, engineering can be applied to whatever use case. It's just where you dial the focus in. And right now we have a good amount of kind of parallel focus with police and Cybertruck and ballistic protection, off-roading, storage solutions, modularity for attachments of things. Like we want the most badass future we can have, and we want Tesla to win. A lot of people here, very rightfully so, just want EVs to win. We're biased. We want Tesla to win. Like, I'm not interested in looking at other cars here that aren't Teslas. I want Tesla to win. That's why we exist.
Yeah, I feel like with as much as Tesla's mission is to transition the world to a sustainable future. I mean, ultimately, for me personally, of course, that's why we're here, or that's why we're doing it. Of course, we want EVs to do it, but you don't see people following any other company like they are Tesla. But that's I could sidetrack on that. So, what is the Pikes Peak for the Cybertruck, if anything? Is it the Baja 1000? Like, have you even thought about that?
It could be, the kind of things we're doing for Cybertruck should be able to make it fast in any environment. So events like Baja and others, I think, are definitely on the roadmap. The beauty of Pikes Peak and the beauty of these events are the more extreme, the more crazy of a scenario you show people, the more confident they are in the choices they make for their daily driven cars. How many Ferrari owners race their Ferrari? They want to know they have a car that's capable of being fast on the racetrack. Not everyone has to go to Pikes Peak in this audience. But anyone who owns a Plaid, hopefully they get a little bit more pride in their Plaid, seeing that we go to Pikes Peak and beat the crap out of all these cars that are much faster. That's really the goal, is just to show that it can be done. It doesn't mean everyone needs to do it. But I think, leadership is just showing the furthest extremes you can, and we seek out those extremes. So, yeah, Baja, and there's lots of different types of off-road events. These events like King of Hammers and stuff. We're very interested in engaging in that side of the market because we haven't, and we're going to learn a lot along the way. But thankfully, our engineering teams that we work with are world class, and our opinion, quite frankly, is if you're a great engineer, your team's great engineering, you can solve anything. And I think the best use case of that is looking at Elon himself. I mean, how many different categories is he solving? And he's the world's best living engineer. So I think that sums it up.
Yeah, no, it's you're right. Feel free to give it a round of applause. But what would you say? So you've obviously there was an article that came out several months ago, if not, it could have been 4, even 6 months ago. Obviously, you brought a police car here today. I believe it was South Pasadena. But what was that like? How did that like? Did you ever imagine you would be going kind of extreme opposites, right? Like taking these cars to the brink where it's like you're literally going up 14,000 feet with no guardrails to now being like, okay, we need to protect the people that are serving, the people that are behind, that are driving and putting their lives on the risk every day. Like, what was that transition like, and how did even this whole deal with South Pasadena come out?
Yeah, life is crazy. South Pasadena, oddly enough, gained their trust in us watching our Pikes Peak racing, which is a really weird connection. But, someone was asking me one time about the economics of Pikes Peak. And the one thing I learned is you never know where these stories go and who you meet along the way. I think you just do as much as you can in the most authentic way possible, and people find you. There's not always a direct correlation at first, but over a long enough period of time, you realize things, connect in ways you never imagined. In terms of South Pass, as all of you probably have seen, you've probably seen a Tesla police car here or there at some point, either in person or online. By our estimations, there's probably 100, 150 in existence. Most of them are like a lone one here or there. There's not really a standard for building a Tesla police car. There are these companies that do police upfitting. They'll take whatever you give them. You got a Ford, they take it. You give the Tesla, maybe they'll take it. They'll do the same recipe of stuff and say, here you go, here's your police car. Having worked with Teslas for 10 years, we know it isn't exactly that simple. And there's liability for Tesla as a brand if something bad happens for police cars. There's liability for servicing their Teslas under warranty if the work's done poorly. There's liability for the decision maker of they bet their reputation on EV policing and they had the wrong person do the job. They didn't know what they were doing. Now they're looking like they made the wrong choice and people are second guessing it. So it's a huge opportunity. It's a huge risk because it has to be done right. And we worked with South Pasadena for about 2 years. We worked with them on the logic of selling their city council. Our team was at city council hearings till 2 a.m, multiple times, side by side with them for years. We're very, very close with them now because of this entire process. But we had to learn deeply all the objections, all the crazy stuff you can't imagine that comes up in city council meetings, like, can Russia hack all the the facts are on our side. As Tesla enthusiasts, every year the facts become more and more on our sides, and we believe that in the past year or two, it became not just that it was an argument we can win, it's, to me, fairly offensive that it hasn't happened faster, because the more we study it, one fact that drives me nuts that I'll leave with you on it is all police cars, whatever the maker and model, have to be on all the time to support the electronics, all the communication systems. So if you have a gasoline-powered car, it's running the entire time. And when you study the math on it, as taxpayers, what you're paying for, 60% of the fuel usage is idling. So you're spending all this money for fuel, 60% of the time is idling. It burns all that crap up in the air that you breathe. You're spending more money doing it, and then you have to ask yourself, this is dumb, why am I doing this? Like, I'm spending more money on a car, it's bad for the environment, they're just burning gas all day, what's the point? So there is no point, we just have to prove that this is better. And part of proving that it's better is proving that it's resilient to all scenarios. It's an engineering challenge, it's a public education challenge, it's a data challenge, and South Pasadena deserves as much or more credit than us, because they're the first police department in the world that said, to hell with this, every police car is going to be EV all at once, everything's Tesla, Unplugged is going to do all of them, and we're taking every police car off the road that they have and making all of them Teslas. So that's a pretty big deal, I think.
Yeah, no, I think it just, hopefully it just takes a few of these police departments to continue to just double down, and most importantly, huge partners like yourself that are willing to use your own time to go and sit at the council meetings until 2 a.m. But yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for what you do for the community, really for the EV community, and really obviously just making Teslas the best products in every way. And it's crazy just to think, actually it's funny because it's like how much just preparing for the police cars is actually preparing you for the building whatever accessories you're working on for the Cybertruck. But yeah, actually, if you're available, September 16th, we're gonna have a Tesla Corsa event, collaboration event with Unplugged Performance. It's in Buttonwillow, so make sure you check that out. But yeah, let's give a round of applause to Unplugged Performance. Again, they have been an amazing partner, always just showing out. Make sure you stop by their booth, give them a look, talk to some of the people there, get more expertise on what they're up to. But Ben, thank you. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you all. It's really the community that gives us energy and gives us purpose. So thanks for listening. Thanks for coming out here.
Thanks, Ben.